Hello everyone, my name's Neil, if you haven't seen my videos before. I have some chronic illnesses. I have end-stage liver cirrhosis, as well as all the wonderful things that go with it. I also have hypermobile Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, which is a connective tissue disorder, and I'm on a feeding tube. But anyway, today's video I want to talk about is living with chronic illness and depression, because those things on their own are hard enough as it is, but then when you go and mix them, it can be, a recipe for disaster. Something very difficult and hard to deal with and to come back from once you get pulled in. It's a hard thing to do. I mean, let's face it, when you're dealing with chronic illness, you're dealing with things like in and out of the hospitals, doctors, a regimen of medicine that's who knows, maybe a special diet that you have to stick to, restrictions on travel, where you go, how you go. Like right now, I'm dealing with the fact that being this feeding tube, that if I go anywhere that's going to be gone for more than a few hours, I have to bring that stuff with me. And it's not so easy to do when you're out in public and things like that, because you're pulling your shirt up and, it's just something extra you got to deal with. Plus, you got to keep the formula at room temperature, not hot and not cold, because if you get it cold and you put it right in your stomach, you're going to get yourself a really bad upset stomach from it. And, when it's sitting out in the heat, well, that stuff can go bad, and then that brings a whole nother level of problems. Plus, I've noticed that with the feeding tube, my heat tolerance has been very difficult to deal with, especially when it's really hot. I get these spells that are kind of like a sugar crash. I start getting super hot, real sweaty, dizzy, weak, little confusion, and I have to hurry up and do a feeding. Otherwise, it'll get, I don't know what's going to happen if I push it too far. I haven't pushed it too far, and I really don't want to find out. Chronic illness and everybody's chronic illness, nobody's chronic illness, how should I say this? There's different chronic illnesses that people go through and deal with, and then we could have the same thing, but have different things about it, deal with it differently, have different symptoms. So whatever you're going through, just because somebody is going through something you think is worse, that's the kind of thinking that you should get out of your mind, because whatever you're dealing with is the hardest thing that you're dealing with. Nobody can take that away from you. So you should never feel like, I shouldn't complain because it's not as bad as, we all have our own things that we deal with when it comes to those chronic illnesses. But back to the depression thing, and I'm no stranger to it. I'm on my own, for being disabled and, and being stuck at home for most of the month just by myself watching TV kind of gets old after a while, and depression can really sink in. And it's not just that one scenario, there's so many scenarios with it. Maybe you love doing something, maybe you played sports before, or maybe you went out and you did fishing and now you can't do those things, or whatever it may be, and you've lost those abilities. That can take a toll on your mind, and you should never discredit that. You should never play that down to yourself. These things are hard things to deal with, and admitting that you're having a hard time is a hard thing to do too. Sometimes it's hard to say to somebody, I need help, or it's hard to say to somebody, I can't keep up, or to say, I'm having a bad day, I can't go with you today, or whatever it may be, because they may not understand what you're dealing with. And a lot of people with chronic illness look like normal people. For the most part, I look completely normal, but I have, feeding tube, 3 hernias. I've got liver disease. I'm in pain all the time from the connective tissue disorder. There's things that are in the inside that you can't see from the outside. And you should never play that down to yourself. You are worthy, and you do matter, and your feelings matter too. And you can't forget that. Don't think that somebody isn't going to care, or somebody, isn't going to, help you or be willing to wait for you until you find out if they are or not. Don't pull yourself away from your friends because you don't want to burden them. Let that be their choice. And, a real friend would stick with it anyway. And I'm sure that being chronic illness, you'd understand that, maybe there's some things they're going to go do on their own because they can't do with you. Maybe you used to do things together and you can't do all those things together anymore. And, they may be missing you too. And, we get in this pattern of stinky thinking where we're just thinking that there's no hope and there's no light for it. This whole thing is horrible, and it may be horrible, but you have to find little wins, because without those, you're going to sink further down. And, little goals, small things. Maybe in the past, your goals were larger. Now maybe they can't be like that anymore. And that's okay too. It's just a matter of changing your thought process and how you process those things. And also saying to yourself, it's okay to not be able to do these things anymore. It's okay that I can't keep up. It's okay that I can't do what this person's doing. It's okay that I can't spend as much time as I used to. Cut yourself a break, Not only that, but, for me, going back, I lost a lot in my life, and going through divorce and separation and everything, and went from a home to a 1-bedroom apartment, lost everything, and I've lost everything a few times over. But I remember probably about 5 years ago, I hit a really low depression, and this was before I was diagnosed with liver disease. It was in bed, being depressed, or it was drinking alcohol. One of those two things. I left the house to go to the liquor store. That was what I did for, real bad for a full year, and carried it on for another year after that. I really had to pull myself out, and there was nobody else to really help me, to say, hey, I've noticed you're down. Not only that, but I was really good at hiding it. I was really good at faking that I was happy around other people. In reality, I was miserable. And, I think sometimes we need to, one, admit to ourselves that we're hurting, and, and admit that we need help. And that was really hard for me. And I'm starting to get better at that now. But back then, I didn't, I didn't think those things at all. It was a deep tunnel, the deep pit, and I was stuck in it. And I still have bouts of depression, The difference is, I got a few people I talk to, as far as, texting over the phone and stuff. And I talk to them and stuff when these things are bothering me. And I have a therapist that I talk to as well. Plus, I've joined a church, and that has been a huge blessing to me. To my surprise, everybody has been a very caring people. And, sometimes it's hard to trust people again, especially when you've been through things. Sometimes it's hard for me. I have a hard time. Like, I could talk on a camera like this, or I can talk in front of a whole bunch of people, and it doesn't bother me. But a personal one-on-one, especially in a group setting, I have a hard time with that. I really can't do that, and I'm working on it. I'm trying my best to do it. I'm going to kind of a men's group on Tuesday nights, and I'm starting to break that a little bit. And I think that's really the key. We have to break those bad habits, and it starts with little steps, and that's what I'm finding. I'm finding it's the small steps, and maybe there will be light again at the end of the tunnel. And for me, without having a support system, without having anyone, once that the liver starts turning bad again, I don't have any hopes of a transplant or anything like that. It's going to be when it's my time, it's my time. And I did a video on this not too long ago, but I had to come to peace with that. And to be honest, I really have. I mean, no, do I want to pass? No, I don't. I want to, try to live the best I can for whatever I have left and try to put everything in that I have. And that's part of the reason why I make these videos. I want to try to share my experiences so that people know that they're not alone, and that they know that, they're not the only ones going through this, because it's a dark, lonely road. Chronic illness alone can be a lonely road. And then you add depression with it, and it becomes just a double-edged sword. If somebody's trying to get in to help you, let them in. What do you have to lose? You're already, going through it, and you're already in a rough position. The worst thing that could happen is maybe they could bring a little light into your life. And, I think it's a matter of, letting go and doing that, and, allowing people to help you. And, because there are good people out there, and there are people that want to help, and want to be there for you. And, I find it a blessing that I found this church, because, I remember I had one situation where I had one of those attacks from the heat, and I was, we were outside and everything, and I had to go, and I rode with somebody, and everybody jumped up to help me, and, which really surprised me. I mean, everybody was grabbing my chair from me. They were, jumping up, are you okay? Are you okay? And that was really amazing to me. It really was. And that right there, is proof that there is hope, and there are good people, and there are people that want to help. And sometimes it's also hard to let those people we love and that we care about in, because we do love them so much, and, we don't want to burden them with what we're dealing with, especially, if you're dealing with where, it could end in, taking your life, and now you're worried about having people get close to you, for me, being alone and everything, it's, a hard idea, because, to like find a relationship or anything like that, because for me, I don't want somebody getting into a relationship and then having to deal with my infirmities and stuff like that. But, somebody had said to me that, if that's what they choose, then they choose that. And you can't take that away from them. And I think that really goes to letting people help, and letting people, that want to come in and they want to help you and they want to be there for you. I think that's something that we need to do. And, we have to remember that we don't know what tomorrow brings. And tomorrow could bring something bad, yeah, but you have just as much of a chance it could bring something good. And, so be excited for tomorrow, because we don't know what it brings. Tomorrow's a mystery, right? And yesterday's history. It's over. It's gone. You can't go back. No matter how bad we wish we could change some things, we can't. And, we have to push forward and do the best we can with what we got. And, whether that's you know, dragging our medical equipment behind us or not. You know, we just have to push, and we have to, you know, try to make it through. I've said this before, and, you know, you got two choices. You know, think of it like water. You can be a river, where a river is hard to stop. It continues through, it teems life, there's life in it, you know, it cuts past, and, you know, it can get stronger and keep pushing through and brings life, you know, to the edge of those shores and everything. Or you can be stagnant water like a pond, where, you know, you grow algae and you're just kind of stuck in one place. And, you know, for me, I try my best to be that river, you know, not having the money, not being able to afford things. And when things happen, like my truck breaks down and stuff like that, it makes it even harder. But it's something that, you know, got to deal with. It's life. And, you know, do the best we can with what we got and push on to the next time, you know, just keep going. So I want to thank everybody for watching this video. If you like the video, please give it a thumbs up, and please follow. Also, if you want to help me out, there's a link in the About section where you can do that. That's not why I make these videos, but it's there if you find that on your heart, you want to help me out with that. So I want to thank you for watching this video and sticking around to the end. Hope everyone has a wonderful and blessed day.